So let's take a look at what a top tier guard army has to offer, with a rather cool list that went undefeated at a grand tournament. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Imperial Guard once more, and today I thought we'd take a look at arguably the most successful list since the balanced data slate, and hopefully gain a few insights as to how a strong guard army might come together in the current version of the game. This list came third at I think the single biggest grand tournament since Warzone Nephilim has come out, the Paris GT. That was an event of over 150 people, so both going undefeated and being on the podium of that really is an achievement, easily the equivalent of winning a much more normal size event in my opinion. Currently, despite all of the Nephilim updates, the guards still seem to be struggling somewhat. I made a recent video as to how most factions in 40k are performing these days, and the guard really are still having a rough time of it. Not very many top event finishes, pretty bad win rates, even despite the massive buffs of Hammer of the Emperor, Armor of Contempt, and a bunch of free war gear. They still seem to be a bit behind the power curve compared with a lot of the other armies of 9th edition. It makes it really cool to see when someone does well and achieves a great result with a more challenging faction. So here we have the list itself then. It was run by a gentleman called Sven, who used it to take third at the Paris Grand Tournament. We already covered the winner of that event, who took some Imperial Knight free blades. I'll link the video of that down in the video description. During the run, he didn't manage to lose a single game with the list, fighting off some very scary Tyranid lists multiple times over the event, and even the one game that was theoretically a draw was still a 1 victory point win to the guard, and I'd take that as a moral victory in my book. The list itself is made of a single Cadian brigade. Cadians get their reroll 1s when they stay still, plus overlapping fields of fire for +1 to hit on their stratagem. They let you get extra shots with the tank commanders, and they also allow you the Relic of Los Cadia, which does make an appearance in this list. Pask and Creed are both on show here as well, and more than that, since the supplement came out, they've got a lot of powerful stratagems. They can make infantry squads a fair bit tougher, and get some nice damage output buffs on their units, counting them as stationary even if they moved, and getting additional AP as well. Load Fire Reload is a pretty nasty stratagem when you're targeting monsters and vehicles as well, giving you double exploding 6s to hit. Lots of good stuff. A lot of people seem to be running big white shield blobs of conscripts, but that seems to be less popular now in Nephilim, seeing as you don't have as many CP to make that formation happen. I do find it quite cool that Guard are one of the few armies that really makes great use of a brigade formation as well. They've got cheap choices for every single role in the force organisation chart. In particular for this list, the brigade allows them to gain a few more extra troops and HQs without going to have to dip into another battalion or patrol. In my opinion, by far the most terrifying things in the list are the trio of tank commanders leading the army. Now the 2+ save Russ got Armor of Contempt, it makes it significantly hard to take out unless you've got some really high AP shots. And it seems that the adaptation that Mr. Sven has made is to put extra sponsons on the Rosses when they were often just run with Demolisher cannons to keep them cheap. I guess if they're harder to take out, then you can put even more eggs in one basket and make their firepower even more ridiculously efficient. First up, we've got a tank commander with the Gatekeeper Cadian relic. That's the one that's a flat 3 damage battle cannon, so can happily stay at range. A heavy bolter, a storm bolter, and plasma sponsons. This guy looks like he's fairly well suited for loitering towards the back, staying safe, and with blast weapons on the sponsons, he could be a particularly good target for load fire reload, getting exploding 6s to hit and more against vehicles. Just for any of these tank commanders as well, the shock troop stratagem can be really handy. It's 2 CP on tank commanders, and it allows you to move the full distance at 10 inches, counter stationary, so you get your grinding advanced double shoot, also get to reroll 1s, and the added benefit of extra AP at half range as well. If it makes the difference between getting Demolisher cannons in range or getting lines of sight with Gatekeeper, then that could be 2 CP well spent. The next tank commander is a Demolisher one, Demolisher cannon, multi-melter sponsons, heavy bolter and storm bolter. Absolutely ludicrous firepower coming out of this guy. With the Cadian order an average of 12 very high quality anti-tank shots, as well as the previous 2 stratagems, you also could burn 2 CP for getting a max 12 shots out of the thing, if you did need to flatten something like an Imperial Knight. Lastly, for the tank commanders, we have Knight Commander Pask, who also goes all in with Demolisher cannon and multi-melters, and a heavy bolter, storm bolter, and hunter killer missile. Really no expense spared here, as he's a cool 280 points. But basically anything that gets within his gun range is going to get absolutely mauled as he hits on 2s. While they bring absolute tons of raw power with these tank commanders, I do feel like you have to play at least a little bit cagey with them. If they do get focused with a bunch of high quality anti-tank early, they're going to go down and lose a whole load of points, and any blast weapons are kind of susceptible to being locked up in combat by chaff if they do get charged by something that can move super quickly. In any case though, while any of these tank commanders are alive, they're going to be an enormous threat that the opponent just can't ignore. Lord Castellan Creed himself and a platoon commander. They've chosen not to take Creed as the warlord, despite the 2 command point gain that you get for having him. He's basically there for some longer range orders, as his voice of command automatically goes out to 12 inches. Instead, it seems to be the platoon commander that Creed has delegated some responsibility to. He takes the Cadian warlord trait Gifted Commander. To be fair, I think it is a lot more use than Creed's generic one. This is the one that allows you to redeploy 1 Cadian vehicle or 3 Cadian infantry units, and you can opt to put them into strategic reserve if you want to. Even just a single redeploy like this could be really big on any of the tank commanders, if it either makes the difference of them being to fire turn 1 because they can draw a line of sight on something, or avoiding being shot themselves and you're losing 250 plus points in a single turn, then that redeploy will be worth its weight in gold. Otherwise, he also takes the Relic of Los Cadia as well. That's the one that allows you to get reroll hits and wounds of 1 for a single turn, and that can be pretty handy if your units are moving up. If you could get that going on multiple tank commanders at once, and also use their order to reroll the number of shots on the demolisher cannons and things, then you're in for a good time. If you happen to be playing Chaos though, then so much the better, as it gives you an absolute insane reroll everything to hit and wound. So it could just be used by tank commanders or basilisks to nuke something like a Death Guard or Thousand Suns Terminator unit right off the board. The platoon commander's also got a power sword and plasma pistol as well, making good use of the new free gear. Then we get on to infantry. In the troop section, there's 6 infantry squads and 2 squads of scions. The infantry squads take las cannons, plasma guns, plasma pistols, power swords, and voxcasters, pretty well loaded, and the scions take plasma pistol, power sword, and voxcaster, again all free. With move coming from Lord Castellan Creed or a platoon commander, they can get OBSEC really quite far and ping onto objectives to flip them when needed. Plus, if they do ever get to fire with the plasma guns and las cannons, then so much the better for a little bit of extra damage. With a bunch of small units that aren't too hard to hide, it could be quite good for the boots on the ground objective that Guard can get. 1 victory point per turn for each table quarter with a regiment infantry unit in it, or besides the first turn. And there's also a command squad here to help out who has a regimental standard, which if they can survive with a regimental standard in the centre of the board for a turn or 2, then that's more victory points yet. The Scions don't have any special weapons, so aren't exactly damage dealers. Again though, they'll be great for scoring secondaries, whether it's engaged on all fronts, or retrieving data actions. Finally, for infantry units, there's a rather interesting include of a veteran squad with melter guns, flamer, las cannon, and plasma pistol. That's going to be delivered by the Hades breaching drill, a Forge World pseudo-transport model that allows you to deep strike, and if it does ever get a charge off against a vehicle, it can actually be fairly nasty, as the attacks get punched through with a massive flat damage of 6. Between the veterans and the drill themselves, it's going to do some hefty damage to, say, an outlying enemy vehicle, and then you've got more units in table quarters or to jump onto objectives as you see fit. Kind of fun to see a Hades breaching drill used. I haven't seen all that many pop up in competitive lists. Finally, we've got some last support vehicles and artillery. 3 scout sentinels with las cannons, seeing as the weapons are free now, you may as well take the big hitters. They fill the brigade selections and also allow you to get a little bit of screening early on, chipping away with a tiny bit of anti-tank fire too. Sentinels are pretty handy just for annoying units to be jumping onto objectives and can actually move really far with Go Recon, which sometimes can surprise enemies. Finally, there's a trio of Basilisks, solid guard artillery that will be re-rolling 1s to hit with Cadians. Between the trio of them, they should be able to put some decent hurts on the most vulnerable enemy unit each turn, wherever it is on the board. Interestingly, none of them are taking the full payload tank ace upgrade. It seems that Mr. Sven might have wanted to keep the command points for big damage dealing stratagems turn 1. Seem quite good as a precision damage tool, should be good for that extra little bit of firepower wherever you most need it. Overall, I do think it's a very cool list. Great to see someone having some decent success with Guard. I feel that perhaps the biggest risk will be those tank commanders getting neutralised early. If they die, then there isn't all that much damage dealing in the rest of the list. I think you'd have to play them pretty carefully not to get them killed, but also not to get tagged in combat either. Sometimes a bit of a challenge when you've got 24-inch guns on the go. Otherwise though, plenty of fast-moving, deep striking, and OBSEC units. Should be good for most mission secondaries and things. Hopefully the rest of the guard can hold the line while the big guns get to work. So fairly exciting stuff for the guard, I think. Let me know what you think of the list down in the comments below. I certainly welcome any insights as to how it was played, or if I've missed any fun stuff that it can do. If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular 40k stuff coming, with new videos out just about every day. And finally, if you have been enjoying Auspex Tactics videos lately, I would just like to mention that the channel has a Patreon page, which is how I can keep all this content coming quite so regularly. If you're enjoying a lot, then any support is massively appreciated. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, including seeing certain videos early each week and regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel. There's plenty of other interesting stuff as well, so feel free to check that out down in the link in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.